It's Movie Time is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.com.
It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the shows and read the reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Elizabeth Toulan.
And this is
It's Movie Time.
Elizabeth.
John.
The film Calvary.
Yes.
Starring the great actor Brendan Gleeson.
Yes.
It's Irish, set in Ireland.
Yes.
It's Catholic.
Yes.
Irish, Catholic.
Click.
We have a virile interest in this film.
Yes.
Tell me what Father's struggle is.
Well, Irish, Catholic, it's a film that appeals to, I think, all audiences.
Good.
Okay.
Right.
Because of the themes. Okay. They're ones with which we're familiar.
All right.
Okay.
Name one for us.
Forgiveness.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
And the subsidiary question of, is contrition necessary before you get your forgiveness? Okay. And the other is faith.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in a more specific area, we have child abuse,
Right.
which has certainly been a dominant motif in the Catholic Church for the last several decades.
It
as
has.
We've become aware of it,
Yeah.
and that's one of the core actions in the past that spurs us on to be interested in what happens to Father James.
I think you're right about that. I mean, I would say that it's a vehicle that will draw interest for that reason.
Right.
On the other hand, I think to attach too much significance to that particular
Okay.
example of harm done to others, I think the film is largely about this. We walk the planet. We experience losses. We are harmed by others. And the question becomes, do we live in that harm and continue to suffer, or do we engage in forgiveness and release ourselves? And then this, again, the subsidiary question of the person who harms us, is our forgiveness dependent upon their act of contrition? And the film explores that.
It opens with a shot in the confessional.
Yeah.
There's the priest, there's his face,
Uh-huh.
there's the unseen penitent, and his penitent, the very opening of the film, claims that he will murder Father James within the week, a week from then, because he was abused as a child, and he is now going to take somebody out in the Catholic Church who is innocent.
Exactly,
Isn't that
which
great?
I think is, well, in a way, think about it. That man in the confessional at age 7 was an innocent. He lost his innocence.
Right.
And he's saying, what is it? It's
Yes.
sort of an eye for an eye in a way. You are innocent and you will go and you will suffer. Because the offending priest is dead. That we learn that.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
So there's no other way for him to get back, and he wouldn't want to get back at a pedophile. He would want to get back at somebody who's innocent, to take the other, like a hostage,
It is,
taking somebody who's
taking-
equal.
Right.
And Father, played by Brendan Gleeson, who of course is, you can't get enough of his face.
Right.
It just rivets you through the whole thing. Is patiently visiting many of his parishioners in town, so you can see little episodes
Right.
that dot it until we get to that moment. So it have an Agatha Christie, like, let's look at all the suspects, and everybody is possible as a suspect. One of them is the assassin-to-be.
Right, and I did question whether or not this was a true, thriller or a mystery.
Right.
Yes, we wonder.
Right.
I would wonder more and be more deeply riveted to the idea of a mystery if I thought Father James had that urgency, and he really doesn't show us that.
He doesn't.
Instead, he goes back. He's instructed by the penitent, go get your affairs in order. And what he's doing is he continues to minister to this incredibly challenging flock. Okay,
Right.
of, you could say misfits, and I would just say, hey, it's that mess of the human experience,
Yeah.
people suffering.
I love the very rich man, isn't it, in town?
Yes.
Who pees on the
painting. Yes.
On this wonderful Holbein, I think, or somebody's
Yes,
painting.
painting.
So you have the adulterer,
Yes.
and she has married to the butcher,
Mm-hmm.
who's not terribly bright, and knows that she's been unfaithful to him, and so you've got a whole
And
bunch.
he's a batterer.
Yeah, and he's a batter, right? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they're a
Yeah.
whole motley crew. But Father goes through. But I think you caught something there that I've been thinking about, is that Father James actually knows from the confessional who his assassin will be.
I mean, you know, and again, I don't think that the film is really about that.
But I think
don't.
Yeah, but I think that supports your point.
It does.
He knows from the beginning. He doesn't look like he's burning to find out who it is. He looks like a man who knows who his assassin's going to be.
This film has so much going for it, okay? And I have to tell you that when I sat through it, and just sort of a word of caution, it does have violence. It does have some sexual drug use, whatever.
Yeah.
So I would be careful about kids, but still, the point is the film is loaded with really rich imagery, major themes concerning our human existence on the planet, and how do we from cradle to grave, what's the experience? The questions I think that are out there that are really interesting. Calvary, is it a matter of faith, a matter of forgiveness?
Well, doesn't Christ know who his execution is going to be?
Yes, he does.
And he knows
Yes.
he knows that he's going to die.
Right.
So there's a very similar. I love the way there's so much richness, as you would say, in this. We get to see Father James's daughter. We
Yes.
get to have him interact with her, and to hear about the fact that he was married, had a child, and then went into the priesthood.
After his wife passed away.
Yeah.
Right. But again, I think, just for viewers, note that the film is bookended in a fashion by two confessionals.
Ah.
One hidden, one very transparent
Yes.
and open. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And this film is loaded with that.
Yeah. And
Okay.
and that last confessional that you're talking about is a rather splendid and beautiful affair, almost lyrical when
It
you
is.
think about the circumstances
It is,
at the end
exactly.
of the film. But it does parallel the cinematography. Could you comment on that at all? I mean, we're talking about a lot of little insular things, little incidents with parishioners.
Yes.
But is there a larger scope in the cinematography of this? And because you were showing it to me this morning.
Oh, right. Yes, there is. I mean, the landscape is
Yes.
spectacular. I mean, if you've been to the west coast of Ireland, this is Sligo. It's spectacular.
Yes.
And we do see, the parishioners where they live, and this spectacular landscape. We see this landscape. It's a plateau. It looks like a mesa, and it's covered with that verdant, rich green grass and the wonderful peat and turf that makes up Ireland. And it's there in the background. We see it again and again, and it's sort of again a reminder. He's headed there. He's headed there to his Calvary, and it's there hanging in the background.
Now, Elizabeth, you're a Boston attorney.
Yes.
And so you are a counselor used to details. And I can't find a critic who has attended to one of the most interesting parts of this film, which is the interaction between Father James and the little boy.
Michael, the altar boy.
Yeah.
Well, I think Michael and another character actually play very pivotal roles in the film, but they're not major roles. They're not characters that scream at you.
Yes.
But early in the film, we meet Michael, and he's been pilfering wine. And then Father
Yes,
James
that's a
makes
great
no
one.
bones about it and calls him on it. And this kid, without compunction, pushes back on Father James in a way that no good Catholic boy would ever consider doing with a priest. And I think it's the marker, again, the trial of Father James. He's being tried for the sins of all of those priests that blew it by
Yes.
sexually abusing kids and
Yes,
whatnot.
yes.
And then the hierarchy in itself too. That hasn't answered, hasn't gone about, hasn't engaged in an act of contrition.
Sure.
Right. So he's there
Yeah.
being disrespectful. Later in the film, it was almost humorous. It was almost comical. He's standing, because he's quite young. I think he's maybe 12, if that.
Yes.
He's standing on the beach that Father James will have to visit on the appointed day.
Yes.
But in the middle of the week, he's there. He's painting a seascape, and there are two figures. And Father James approaches and says, "Well, who are those two figures?" Prescient. The two figures to be there later
Sure.
in the week.
And one of the things I love about that interaction is their kind of repartee, not quite screwball comedy. No,
Right, yeah.
but the way in which the priest and the boy interact is sharp, one coming right after
Very,
the other.
right.
And I love that interaction. And let's
Yeah.
not discount the fact that this is a dark comedy.
It is a dark
I mean, it
comedy.
looks like
is.
heavy-duty Catholic priest,
Yeah, it
Ireland,
is.
but it is filled with very black humor.
I think it would be unbearable if there wasn't humor. I think some people might be offended because it's such a serious subject with so much suffering, and how could they make a joke about it? But they're not making a joke about it at all. And I do about the suffering, to be sure. And I think that the character of Teresa, another minor character who carries an important message in the film, She's the married to this young man who is killed suddenly, accidentally by a drunk driver, and she is someone that we would expect to see anger. She has a conversation with Father James. They discuss faith.
Yeah.
And he says at one point, his concern is faith really just a fear? Is it just a fear of dying? Is that what it's about? And if that's all it is, it's not that strong. It's not going to hang in there, right?
Sure.
And hers is much stronger.
Yeah.
And I think she is this promising character who exhibits for him what is possible for someone who has true faith.
Yeah.
And she is comforted by what he offers. I think there's another interesting scene in the film, though, related to the death of her husband that is worth noting. The camera spent time on it. They're at the airport. Her husband's coffin is on the tarmac, getting ready to be loaded into the plane. And Father James stops on the ladder and looks down at the tarmac and sees that the airline employees are just hanging over the coffin and having a conversation. And we're struck by how disrespectful that is. And I think that is something, we're asked to look at that and be in that moment maybe longer than we're comfortable with. Because you want to know, why doesn't he go down there and say, show respect for the dead? But that's throughout the film. There's a lack of respect that people have for each other. There's a lack of sacrality.
Oh, sure. And I think the film is attempting to update us in its reflection on religion, and Catholicism maybe in particular, but this is much more general than Catholicism. This is, what is the modern world? Is it full of cynicism and skepticism? Is there any faith? And Father embodies a person of faith with seeming doubts along the way. In other words, a very modern approach to religion, but still based upon a belief in Calvary, Christ, redemption, forgiveness. But it's not easy anymore. It's not as easy as it was when I was a kid.
No.
I mean, you're filled with distractions and attacks from all sides. So
Yeah.
Teresa, Father, these are stalwarts in there, but Father is the beautiful embodiment of everything that we are, which is
Right.
still doubtful, still uncertain, but needing faith. And here he knows the moment of his death is about to come. So like Christ, he's going to do something worthwhile if, in fact, that happens. We, of course, on It's Movie Time, we do not let the audience know what happens at the end.
Right.
So we would
Right,
not
we
do
would
that.
not.
Anyway.
No.
But Elizabeth, it's wonderful to have you here. And of course, we could go on and on.
Well,
But
I
this is
do-
a limited show. I know you're going to tell me
I do have
about
one
so
more
much
thing
more.
I want to say.
Well,
no,
then you
but
say
I
it.
think we have to talk about Bishop Montgomery, because I think
Do
it's
it.
significant.
Do it.
Bishop Montgomery.
Well, he's a bishop.
He's
Isn't
a bishop.
he a holy man?
He's
Doesn't
a
he
prince
see
of the
things?
church. He lives in a palace. We are given a lot of eye candy at that appointment, right? So Father James goes there to report the murderous confessional, right? The confession that I'm going to kill you in 1 week. And he goes through that canonical exercise of, wait a second, the elements of contrition weren't there. Therefore, you can go forth, report, find out, right? But do it on your own time. It's not an official church matter.
Right.
However, when the church is burned to the ground, okay, Bishop Montgomery has much deeper concerns about finding the perpetrator, telling us once again, this is the cynical view of the film, right? But that, the church hierarchy is much more concerned about the capital assets than the body, the soul.
Oh, of course. I love
Is
it.
it dark?
In fact, all of those other prelates pale by comparison with the authenticity and sincerity of Father James.
Right.
I mean, none of them gives him the right advice. All of them have some worldly concerns, but the bishop's a beauty. Now, Elizabeth, therefore, is it okay for me to wrap up now?
Well, the trial, though. There is the trial. I do think, again, the trial and the testing, okay, by the unbelievers. But the testing, I mean, the alcohol and Jack Brennan's wife, the seductress coming
Yes.
on to him.
Yes.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned, in her red slinky dress. I mean, the poor man is assailed on all fronts.
But he's great. He
He is
plays him so
fantastic.
cool.
Yeah.
He is a man on a mission.
He
And the
is.
mission might be his own
He
death
is.
or expiation for the whole little town, which is on his way down.
Definitely right. He's taking on the sins
That's
of
a
the
good
world.
word, the trial. All right, Elizabeth, I have to wrap it up because there are other shows on NPR that need to have time. And so I'm going to ask you to award a grade to this film. The film is called Calvary, and Elizabeth Toulan, what's your grade?
I'm giving the film an A.
Ah,
And I'll tell you why.
yeah.
Because it's not shy about looking at the big issues of the day, however uncomfortable they may make us.
Yeah.
And I think that if viewers go and they are maybe shocked by some of the violence in the film, that will subside when they have time to ponder these big themes. Forgiveness, faith, contrition. Is it necessary?
Ah, you got it. And I will award it an A- in order to be different from you.
Okay.
Because it certainly deserves an A as well as anything. And I'd say because the episodic nature of the film puts me off just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it diverts itself from some of the central impressions and themes that it would like. But that's minor. If the world is just, Brendan Gleeson will be up for an Oscar nomination for this role. And it is worth going to this film to see it.
I think so. Yeah. Thank you, John, for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome, Elizabeth.
It was fun.
Hope you'll come back.